Thanks for joining me this evening. It has been a while since I last saw you. However, today we have a really interesting lineup, and based on the stats, I'm hoping to see everyone. I'll be looking this evening at disease. We're going to be looking at some disease that affect the immune system or that the immune system would have been associated with. And we're also going to be looking at some disease that are pretty much disease that are transmitted by ear droplets or droplets in the air, that type of thing. So pretty much a very interesting lineup. We are waiting on all to join. Please be reminded to like, share, and subscribe. And I do send the evening's greeting to our friend there in St. Vincent. And again, I continue to wish them all the best. This evening lineup comes as a result of the Sahara dust we faced last year, the volcano in St. Vincent, COVID-19, which continues to be a problem, and summer coming up. All these phenomena, all of these are going to play a very, very important role in causing persons to become ill if they are not prepared. So we encourage you to join us so that we can have a discussion, a discourse around the topic disease of the immune system. So if you're there, just reach out for me. I am seeing Damon. Are you still there? I'm seeing Jawawan. Are you still here with us? Just tell me in the chat and I'll just take it right away. All right, we're just weeks away from the exam. We're expecting to get the broad topics from CXC come the 10th of May. As soon as I would have received that, I would have gotten access to that file. Definitely, I will be changing the method of preparation to ensure that we can zero in or to ensure that we zero in on those topics so that we can, of course, realize success. So we're looking at disease of the immune system. And when we talk about some disease of the immune system, some of these disease of the immune system will cause the immune system to overreact, or one might say not function properly. Now, it is already known that if the immune system is weakened or compromised, it will, of course, expose us to ill health, right? Or the individual might become, or might be easier, it might become easier for the individual to be exposed to an infection. Now, once we're talking about the immune system, the first thing that usually comes to mind is, of course, AIDS. First thing that comes to mind is, of course, AIDS. Now, we're not going to be looking at AIDS today as we're going to be treating that as a topic by itself, as it is usually always on the paper. So we're going to be treating with that as a topic by itself. We want to look at two other diseases, however, that are disease of the immune system, and we're going to be looking at asthma, and we're also going to be looking at A fever. Interestingly, while we said A fever, the disease doesn't cause fever. So let us look at asthma, and as you have your own experiences with asthma, feel free to share them as we go along. Now, the first thing we need to know is that asthma is caused by what we refer to as allergens. Asthma could also be caused from inheritance. Now, when we have asthma, it causes the bronchial tubes to contract. It causes the bronchial tube to contract, and we're talking about the bronchioles and the bronchus, that type of thing. It's causing them to contract. Now, then we're going to have inflammation, usually associated with the tube once you're suffering from asthma or you have an asthma attack. The muscles, of course, will contract, the airway will be reduced, and of course, there will, of course, be increased mucus around this time. As a result, the person might suffer from wheezing, coughing, shortness of breath. All these are signs, symptoms associated with asthma. Now, what really causes the asthma attack? Now, the asthma attack can be triggered by pollen, house dust mites, fur from animals, whatever animals, your cat, your dog, whatever animal that you're associated with, of course, that could cause the asthma to, of course, be triggered. You could have a viral infection, or you could also have, you also could be a smoker or be exposed to smoking. And if you are exposed to that smoke, then that could also trigger the asthma. Now, spores from fungus could also trigger your asthma. Air pollutant, and that is now when we talk about the volcano, when we talk about the Sahara dust. These are suspended particles in the air, and those could also trigger the asthma. So it's very important as a regional exam and as regional students that we understand that it is very important for us to have a good grasp of asthma or these diseases that are associated with the immune system. As it were for asthma, we're now talking about the many things that could cause the onset of asthma, and we're pretty much looking at suspended air particles, pollutant, pollen. Summer is coming up, we're going to be having a whole lot of pollen and all of that. But with the volcano in St. Vincent, good topic to be on the syllabus. With the Sahara dust that we experienced last year, good topic to be on the paper. As such, I thought it would have been prudent to expose you to this content. So we talk about air pollutant, we talk about dust. Now with COVID going on, and now they're saying that dengue might be on the rise in Jamaica, might be on the rise. They are seeing some signs. With dengue, COVID, the volcano, the uncertainty of school, exams, and all of that, that is definitely going to be leading persons into that stressful zone. And once you get there, that can also cause an asthma attack. Now, if you're exercising, I know that person's like to say, I'm going, I'm going really, really hard. It's good to exercise, but please be reminded if you are going too hard, too much, that could also cause the onset of asthma. So we spoke about cigarette smoking. There was a malaria scare in Trinidad. Wow. All right. So all these are things that could cause the onset of asthma. Now, please be reminded the takeaway here. While I would have mentioned a whole lot of things, we want to be sure that we can recall, we can write on that paper when asthma comes around, that these are 4 things I want you to remember. You are going to have a restricted airway. You are going to have inflammation of the bronchial walls. You are going to be having the muscles being contracted, reducing the airway, and you are, of course, going to have increased mucus around the bronchial area or the bronchial tube. As a result, we are going to be having wheezing, coughing, and of course, shortness of breath. Now, I'm going to be touching just one more thing for now, and then I'm going to be doing some training as to YouTube, because I realize that not many persons understand how to use YouTube and how to access the information. So I'm going to be showing you that, and then I'm going to continue with the lesson. Let me just pause to acknowledge everyone. I'm seeing Dee Dee, haven't seen you for a while. I'm seeing Abigail. I'm not too sure I know Abigail. Oh, Paranda. Pinedo. Yes, I know Pinedo. Canton, I'm not too sure I know this person, but welcome if it's your first time on the show. Drummond, not too sure if I know this person, but welcome to the show, and we hope that you're always going to be here with us. I'm seeing Jay, I'm not too sure if I know this person as well, but welcome to the show. We're really, really happy to have you. Can you give us a minute to get a notebook and pen, please? All right, beautiful. And that is why this lesson is so important. So forgive me, guys, if you hear me calling those persons who I know. I will just look at the screen, but I tend to understand the temperament of those persons I know. So there are some things I will say and some that I will not say. What I'm going to say now, I'm going to say it again in the lesson, but just let me do this training before I continue. Jawawan, are you with me? Present? Yes, no? Jawawan? Jawawan? Answer in the chat for me. All right, so Jawawan is not there, or it's slow. Didi, are you there? Didi? All right, Jawawan is present. Beautiful. So I want you to assist me with a training, and I want everybody to do this for me. All right, you're going to just minimize your window, and you are going to go on into YouTube. All right, you are going to go into YouTube, and you can type the name of my channel, CSET Biology TCP, and then you are going to just open one of my video, any of my video. Just open one of my video. Probably I should tell you which video you should open. In a matter of fact, better, let me send you a video, and then I'm going to ask you to open that video so I can give you a quick training as to how you can get the information you sought at now. So just give me a second. I'm going to be sending you a video, ask you to open that video, and from there, you should be fine. So it might be good for me to go to probably the last live I had. So I'm going over to the last live. I'm going to be giving you some training now so that you can find the video, you can find the content, and you don't need to worry yourself about getting a pen or a pencil. It is good if you have a pen or a pencil, really, really, really good. But if there is no pen and pencil, there is, of course, a way around that. And Mr. Wilson is going to help you with that just now. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to be sending the link. All right, here is the link. All right, there I send you a link. Now you're going to follow in order to learn. I want you to click and open that link and the video. Hopefully everybody is using a computer, I think. If you are not, I think you can follow based that you're a guru at what you're using. I want you to open that link, and as soon as you see the video start playing, just pause it for me. When you would have done that, please communicate same so I can tell you the next step. All right, so I'm going to be clicking on the link just the same. I'm going to get back to the lesson just in a bit, but let us just get this out of the way so that you know how to find your content whenever you want to find that content. So a lot of persons are not too familiar with the space here. So it is our responsibility to do a call to action in order to show you around or how to navigate the platform. Now the notes is always on the platform, and that is what I want to show you, how to find the notes or the script for what we're doing. It is always there. It is recorded by YouTube and kept by YouTube, so you can access it at your leisure. All right, so I'm just going to. All right, so cool. So you are with me now. Beautiful. All right. Is everybody ready? Are you ready? All right. Just below the video that you are looking at on your screen, right below the video, you are going to see besides save to the right, you are going to see the ellipsis. That's 3 little dots. You are going to click on those 3 little dots, and you are going to click on open transcript. Once you click on open transcript, the text for the show that we're doing or the text for whatever I am presenting, you will find the text to the right of your screen, and you can of course read the lesson, and of course I'll be teaching to ensure that it follows that. Now if there's a part of a lesson that you want to get to and you really don't want to watch everything, you could just look for the timeline there, click on the timeline, and it will take you to that part of the lesson. All right, so that is how we find the script for the show, or there is another way you could have closed caption on the screen, which is a little different. Now, if you look on the screen and you know a little about computer, somewhere starting from the right of your screen, moving to the left, you are going to have one square, a rectangle, then a settings thing that looks pretty much like a gear, then a little box that seems as if it has some writing. If you were supposed to click on that, that would allow you to have closed caption on your screen, right? But for me to look at the transcript, it is a little better to me as you can move directly to the timeline exactly in the video where you want to find a particular thing, a particular topic, that type of thing. Now, tell me in the chat if that was helpful to you. Now that you are able to find the transcript, now that you are able to turn on the closed caption. Now, another thing I want to teach you before you leave this video, if you look to the left below the video, you will see a blue icon called CSEC Biology TCP. If you click on that icon, it will take you to the back end of my channel. There you can click video or playlist and find all my videos and watch them to your comfort. If you have not yet subscribed, to the right of your screen, just below the window you're looking at, you'll see a red button that says subscribe. You can click on that button, then hit the notification bell and select all. Or there's a yellow button on the screen that says CSEC Biology TCP. You can click on that button as well, and that will allow you to subscribe. To find the video that we suggest that will be coming up next, look to the top right of the screen. You will see a upside down exclamation in a little white circle. If you realize, it is telling you which video is suggested for you to watch next. I do hope that that 101 in finding content on YouTube was helpful. How was it? Not getting through? Very helpful, sir. Yes, it was. Thank you. Good night. All right. Good night, Nemard. All right, good. So Jawawan, you can pretty much just go through that again. I will probably do a video and show you guys how to find this information on the internet, on YouTube. YouTube is way, way powerful, and a lot of persons underestimate the power of YouTube. While we're talking now, everything that I am saying is being transcribed. So you can just go there when you're watching the replay and you'll see the notes going down. So now we're going to look at, of course, causes of asthma. We have looked at some already, but we want to put it in a little smaller group. We want to look at those that are inducers that would have caused the onset of asthma. We refer to some as inducers, and the inducers would be those that we refer to as allergens. And then there is the trigger, and the triggers would be things like airborne particles, irritants or airborne irritants. You would have like things like stress. Stress. Or you could have things like exercise, you're going too hard. Of course, those could cause the onset of asthma. But the three big words we're looking at here is inducer, trigger, and inherited. Of course, you could inherit asthma as a disease. Now, if we have asthma, there are a lot of precautions that we should follow, a whole lot. The first thing you need to know is how the allergens move. How do they get from one place to another? Of course, they are usually airborne particles, which means that they travel in the air from one place to another, and then you inhale these particles. And because you have an overly active immune system, it causes the immune system to give you a response that is not normal for everyone. So everyone might be exposed to pollen, but those persons with asthma, with that overly active immune system, they would react to the pollen or the pollutant in the air much, really, really differently than it would have been for a person without asthma. Now, the signs I have said, including, and remember, signs refer to what you can see. Symptoms refer to what the patient feels. Signs refer to what you can see, and symptom refers to what the patient feels, and usually the patient communicates. So sign would be things like wheezing, coughing, shortness of breath, and of course, inflammation of the bronchial tubes. Now, how do we control asthma? In order to control asthma, we have to ensure that we stay away from the irritants. We have to make sure that we stay away from the allergens. We have to make sure that we stay away from the trigger. And as it were, for inheritance, genetic counseling could assist you with staying away from your child or your loved one being born suffering from this condition. Now, treatment, usually asthma is treated with an inhaler that helps to clear the passageway for air to move freely. Corticosteroids are used pretty much in these inhalers, and you have like antihistamine, and the antihistamine, what it does is pretty much to reduce the inflammation. So if you're a person who is affected by asthma, you want to ensure that you become aware of what causes the onset of asthma. You want to ensure that if you're going to be doing biology or more so HSB, you are aware of asthma. And of course, you could talk a little bit about the volcano. You could talk a little bit about the Sahara dust. You could talk a little bit about pollen and summer, as it were. But you must remember that these are, of course, disease of the immune system. And of course, they are really cause, one would say, it comes about as a result of an overly active immune system. All right, the immune system is acting up. Now, there's another one we want to look at, and that is a fever. Now, if you were supposed to look in the description for this live, you're going to see a video there for a fever, and I think there's a video there for asthma. For those persons who need further information, you can go on there. It is about 4 minutes and 4 minutes, a maximum of about 9 to 10 minutes long. These two videos, they could provide some more assistance for you. Now, a fever is also called allergic rhinitis. A fever is also called allergic rhinitis, and it is it causes the immune system to produce antibodies to the allergens. Now, even a simple thing we would say pollen or dust that wouldn't affect me, but because you have an overly active uh, immune system, then it causes your body to behave in a different manner than it would have caused my body to behave. And as a result, you might fall ill. Now, a fever is triggered like pollen. It is said that it is triggered by pollen from grass. And that is pretty much the most common allergen for a fever. Now, the body will produce histamine, and of course, the signs for a fever is going to be runny nose, sneezing. You're going to have some breathing difficulty. You're going to have mucous membrane. The mucous membrane will be affected. And of course, you are going to have swelling of the inner lining of the nostril. Now, how do we treat with a fever? How do we treat with a fever? There is something that is associated with a fever called immunoglobulin, or you might hear it, you might see it in the video, IgE. Now, when you watch that video on a fever, I want you to pay attention to immunoglobulin E. Let's get back to the cure and treatment. Now, we spoke about the histamine that is produced as a result of A fever. So, one way to treat the A fever is to use antihistamines. We also use inhaler, or we could use nose drops. And there is something now, probably not in your textbook. It is used, or it is something that is it's this new thing that has been worked on where you'd have to swallow a worm or some worm egg, and it works some way in treating with a fever. Don't go about and get any worm or any worm egg to swallow now. It is something that they are looking at. I can't say much about it. And remember, I am not a medical professional, so I would not be able to tell you about more about that. So there's also the whole idea of preventative medicine. So make sure that you avoid, remember, avoid the pollen. If you know that you have a overly active immune system, you might be suffering from a fever. In some cases, persons have runny nose right around the clock as a result of a fever. Another thing that you could get to treat with a fever is what we refer to as allergen shots or immunotherapy. Of course, that's an injection. So you could, of course, use allergen shots or immunotherapy to treat with a fever. I did tell you at the start of the lesson that though we're saying that it is a fever, in that video you're going to find out why it is said to be a fever, but it doesn't really cause a fever. Diagnosis, the skin, to diagnose a fever, we do what is called a skin prick testing. And I'm not going to be telling you about it more than the name of the diagnosis method. So we can do what is called a skin prick testing. We could do a blood test. We could look at the history. Is there anybody in the family with a fever? Then there's a possibility that you might have it as an offspring. Then there's another thing that we could use to diagnose a fever. We could use what we refer to as total serum IgE level. I spoke about that earlier. And of course, we could do nasal smear as we are doing for COVID-19. So that takes us to what we want to look at for the diseases of the immune system. The two big diseases that we spoke about just now was, of course, a fever and asthma. Now, the other thing we want to look at this evening, as we have just 1 hour here, we want to look at airborne disease, and those two diseases that we covered here just now, they nicely tie into these diseases we refer to as airborne, though those are disease of the immune system. So the diseases that we're going to be looking at now, as it were, for airborne disease will be common cold, influenza, tuberculosis, and pneumonia. Now, all these are diseases that are associated with airborne droplets. All right. Now, these are diseases that would affect the respiratory system, and as such, it's very important to know them. Remember, last year we have the Sahara dust, and this year we're having the volcano of St. Vincent. And of course, particles are in the air, summer is coming on, it's getting very, very dry. And of course, things might just move in the wind and you become infected before you know it. So let us just jump right into common cold. A lot of persons would know common cold or would have had common cold sometime in their life, at some stage in their lives. Now, common cold is caused by a virus. Okay, what particles? All right, I am just concerned with the suspended particles in the air. I am not concerned about the volcano. I'm not saying that the volcano released a virus. I'm just talking about the volcano releasing suspended particles, ash and all that, that of course could trigger some of these respiratory problems. All right, so I'm not saying that volcano pretty much caused the virus. That's not what I'm saying. I'm really alluding to the dust particles that are associated with the volcano. As it were, the dust particles that are associated with the Sahara dust that we experienced last year. Who knows if we're going to experience it again this year? It is summer. So common cold is caused by a virus. All right, that's a causative agent. And it is, of course, transmitted by droplets. All right, droplets in the air, we talk about droplets. These enter the air through breathing, coughing, sneezing, all these droplets, and they're out there in the air. And of course, they are going to move with the wind. Now, one way I'm going to be looking a lot at COVID now, treating with some of these disease. One way to avoid these droplets is, of course, to avoid overcrowded areas. All right? If the area is overcrowded and poorly ventilated, the chance of you being infected or picking up these droplets is pretty much greater. Avoid touching areas that are usually eye touch surface unless the area is going to be sterilized as we're doing now. If you walk into a store or as you walk from here to there, the hand is being sanitized because while we're saying that these diseases are airborne, if they were supposed to be on a surface and we were supposed to touch them and touch the face, the mouth, the nose, that type of a thing, we could be infected. And that is why the mask would serve a double purpose in that it would reduce the chances of you inhaling the droplets. And I said reduce, not stop, reduce the chance. And also, it would prevent you from touching that area of your face to transmit that virus. All right. So it is very important that we wear our masks. It's very important that we follow the directives in most cases of our local body. I don't know. Anna is off the hook. All right. So we spoke about avoiding crowded air. We spoke about well ventilated space. We spoke about wearing our mask and, of course, not touching our face or areas that are eye touch area. And if we do, we need to, of course, use some sanitizer to ensure that the pathogen is killed. Give me a second. That is more than I can bear. And I threw a tantrum there. What for, I really don't know. I thought that something was wrong. It was more than I could bear as a father, so I had to go and look. But he's fine. I mean, throwing a tantrum for what I really don't know. All right, so we are back here. Now, what are some of the things that are likely to cause from a person who is infected by the virus? Of course, the nasal membrane will be affected. You might have sore throat, you will have a runny nose, and of course, the throat is, of course, going to be itching you most of the times if you have the common cold. Now, like I said, it is a virus and it will just do its season and go. It's one of those acute illness that will come and go. You get enough rest or you get some vitamin C, you are pretty much out of the woods, as it were, for common cold. Now, let us move on into something else. And what you're going to realize is that these diseases, they are really, really close. So we just spoke about common cold, and I'm now going to be talking about influenza. We're going to be talking about influenza. And it was influenza that was likened to COVID on the 2021 January HSB paper. Remember, they likened influenza to COVID. I remember one of the problems that we're having with influenza as a virus is that it continues to change. Just like you would have heard about COVID, there are many variants. It's the same thing with influenza. And the protective measure for influenza, the protective measure for common cold, the protective measure for, of course, COVID would be somewhat similar. We're not wearing a mask for common cold because it's probably not as contagious as it would have, as COVID would have been, and pretty much doesn't cause the type of harm that COVID causes. So as such, I think that's the reason we're not wearing a mask for common cold. But of course, you want to ensure that the droplets are not getting out there, and you want to ensure that you are not inhaling or swallowing the droplets. So for influenza like common cold, it is pretty similar to common cold. It is caused by a virus. It is also transmitted by droplets. Some of the symptoms include fever. When you have influenza, you tend to have fever. You have headache, the head hurts. You're going to have, of course, sore throat, as it would have been with common cold in some cases, and you will have backache. All right? You will also have shivering, you're trembling. And those are some things that are some signs and symptoms that are associated with influenza. Now, the major effect here of a virus is that it affects the mucous membrane. That's a major effect here. Now, like all other disease, if they are not treated, then they could, of course, lead to death. Whatever disease, if it is not treated, after some time, be it short or long, it could cost you your life. So, how do we treat with influenza? One of the ways to treat with influenza is to have hot drink, is to have rest. Make sure you get a lot of rest. Lie down, sleep, take some rest. Make use of that sick leave that the doctor gave to you. Sleep in a warm area so that you might sweat. It might help with increasing the body temperature to get rid of the pathogen. There's also vaccine that is available for influenza. You'd understand that influenza is a little more dangerous than regular common cold. Now, many forms of the influenza exist, and because many forms of the influenza exist, finding the ideal vaccine sometimes is a problem. Now, remember, preventative medicine to prevent yourself from catching this disease is the best cure, the best solution, the best control. And that is what the government and the World Health Organization is doing when they would have asked us to wear masks, keep our distance, because they really don't want you to inhale that droplet. And we have more persons being infected, as the news is saying about India. I'm not too sure what's happening in India, but what they're saying that they have really seen a real spike in the cases of COVID. Now, make sure that you find yourself in areas that is well ventilated. Now, one might say that going into the bank, we're now standing on the outside, but look at the environment of a bank with the temperature and everybody all crowded in that area. The bank door is closed. It would make it much easier for the droplets to spread in the bank, and then more persons would have COVID. So standing on the outside, persons might say, but we are pretty close together. Probably we are close together, but look at the level of ventilation on the outside versus if we were on the inside. Now, being in the supermarket, that might not be the safest thing to do with COVID. Okay. India had a religious festival that they said created a high, causes that high rise in the COVID. I don't know, but this is news to me. I could check that bit out. So make sure that you are in well ventilated area. Make sure that you are protecting yourselves. If you don't do that, probably we won't have you here for the exam. And we are doing fine so far. I think we are beating time. The other disease that I want to look at, so we have looked at so far asthma, hay fever, common cold, influenza, and now we're going to be looking at tuberculosis. I'm going to be giving you a pretty much a summary of tuberculosis. Feel free to type in any one of these diseases on YouTube and find another short video that can assist you. But these are things that we really want to cover for the exam. I realized that the exam is right around the corner, and that is why I'm having a Monday class. Usually I don't have a Monday class, but I've been out for a while, so I decided that I would have. So tuberculosis. Now, while influenza and common cold is caused by a virus, tuberculosis is caused by a bacterium. All right? Now, it is usually said that tuberculosis is a social disease. Social disease because it is found in overcrowded areas, areas that are usually dirty, and areas where persons are malnourished. I'm not going to say that the persons in prisons are malnourished because I don't know. But what I can say, in a lot of cases, persons who go to prison and spend extended period there, they usually come home with tuberculosis if they make it out. Right? And another thing to look at with tuberculosis is that it tends to be in area that is a little more impoverished and in rural area and in some, should I say, shanty settlement. In some cases, I'm not saying that all shanty settlement are all what they call here ghetto. You'll find that. But where we have places that are overcrowded and the persons living there, they are malnourished, the area is dirty, the chances of you having tuberculosis is greater. Now it is spread by droplets. And this disease is it is so funny. It is spread by droplets, coughing, spitting, sneezing, all that could help to get that droplet out. And that is why when I spoke about the Sahara dust and I spoke about the volcano and all of that, and summer, you can imagine somebody would have spat on the ground and then this bacteria is moved, or bacterium is moved in the wind, and then you inhale that bit. All right. So it comes at a good time. We're talking about tuberculosis, and you really don't want to catch tuberculosis. Now, some of the signs and symptoms of tuberculosis would be associated with the lungs. But let us not fool ourselves. Tuberculosis could also affect the lymph. It could also affect the bone. And if you were supposed to cough up and swallow, tuberculosis would also affect the digestive system. So while it was affecting the respiratory system before as an acute ailment, now that you have swallowed, you would have also infected the digestive tract. Now, the lungs, the lungs will be affected, and because of it being affected, you're going to be having some coughing. You're going to have the individuals that are usually affected by tuberculosis, other than the coughing, they become thin, they become pale, and of course, if it continues for some time or continue without you knowing, you might find yourself in a position where you start to spit blood. You might end up with a fever, and if it is not treated, you might eventually die. So you want to ensure, for those persons who really don't like going to the doctor, it might be a good idea for you to go to the doctor when you're feeling ill, just to make sure that it is something that can be corrected and it is not something that will be left in the open that could, of course, cause your life. Of course, there are persons who can develop immunity to this disease, but in most cases, the immunity is not seen in babies. But as the babies tend to grow older, they might acquire some amount of immunity. One of the things is that when persons are suffering with TB or tuberculosis, which is worse than influenza, they are usually segregated or placed in an isolated area. They're usually placed in an isolated area. And in most cases, we have to ensure that the droplets are controlled. Now, how does the disease impact the body? Let's talk a little bit about that. So by this, we would have been aware of the respiratory tract, the trachea, the bronchiole, the bronchus, that type of a thing. You must have been aware, and you must have been aware of what we refer to as lungs. Now, this is how the disease will work. Now, in the lungs, normally, the white blood cell called the phagocyte would have engulfed, or one might say eaten the bacteria, but would have engulfed the bacteria. However, the inside the cell itself, the phagocyte is not able to engulf the bacteria or the bacterium, whichever the stage it is. All right. So what happens is that the bacteria will, sorry, just let me step back one bit. The phagocyte is not able to engulf the bacterium because of a waxy coating that is around the bacteria or bacterium. Now, the phagocyte, as a result of that, will form a layer around the bacterium. Now, having formed this layer around the bacterium, we are going to have, should I use the word, tubercles. These are some things like little nodular like growth. We're going to have tubercles, little depression, little circles being formed in the lungs. Now, these little circles being formed in the lungs, the tubercle, they will, of course, release toxin, right? The toxin that is produced there. And the toxin will destroy the cells around the tubercle. And remember that we're still in the lungs. So now that these cells are destroyed, you will understand that the lungs is now scarred. And likely the person will at this point start passing blood, spitting blood. But it is important to note that the tubercles having been formed, later they will rupture, they will burst. And when they burst, they are now going to release bacteria. So they're going to release bacteria. At this point, a person that is suffering from tuberculosis is highly infectious. Highly at this point. Highly. You have to make sure that you are wearing your protective gears. And of course, you have to ensure that this person is isolated. Whatever protective garment that should be in place, that must be there. Because at this point, the tuberculosis can be transferred or can be picked up very, very easily. All right? Good, DD. I'm seeing what you're doing there. So when this happens, when the tubercle ruptures and release the bacteria, what is going to happen is that it is going to leave little cavity, little hole, little depression in the lungs. Now, when these are left in the lungs, of course, it might make good for an X-ray to see a scar, but what it would have meant is that the lungs is now damaged, and how you would breathe, how the respiratory system works, that of course will be affected. Sir, so COVID and tuberculosis is similar? Oh, COVID is caused by a virus. Tuberculosis is caused by a bacteria or by a bacterium. Now, the way they affect you might be similar in some sense. But it's not fair to say that they are similar, owing to the fact that one is bacteria, one is bacterium, and the other is a virus. All right? Do we understand? But I really don't. A lot of persons might be affected by TB, but we don't have as many persons walking on the road with TB as we probably would have had COVID. Similar but different causative agent. So DD is saying here, some of the symptoms and signs might be similar, but they're pretty much not the same. All right, good. Now, I said earlier in the show that dengue is on the rise in Jamaica. It's just about the time they're saying that pretty soon we have to pay attention to that because the population is going to rise. And as the population rises, then the pathogen will rise shortly thereafter. So the Ministry of Health is asking persons to be on the lookout, be vigilant, Though we have this rise in teenage pregnancy, though we have the COVID on us, though we have the economic hardship, please ensure that you are protecting your surrounding from mosquitoes. We would have looked at that in some other lessons or some other lessons. How do we diagnose the TB? One, we could do an X-ray of a person's to look at the person's lungs. We could do a Mantox skin test. And let me spell that for you. Mantoux. That's Mantoux skin test. That could be done to find out if you have the TB. Now, prevention and control. Everybody would have heard about BCG vaccination. Now, BCG provides some amount of immunity for for some time, a little time, for against tuberculosis. Now, another thing that we could do to prevent the spreading of tuberculosis is to isolate persons who are affected. There are some bad habits that we need to, of course, look at. Some bad habits that we need to address is to cover our mouth when we are coughing, when we're sneezing. We do likewise. We do not spit in public places and that type of a thing. Just some common ethics that we learn from basic school. We have to ensure that we implement those so that we are not affected by the TB. Now, another thing that is common with TB is cattle, or you might call it cow. So if you are going to drink milk, it is best for you to drink pasteurized milk and not just to just go out and just milk a cow and drink it. All right? You might be hurting yourself. So make sure you boil the milk, or some person might say scald the milk before you drink the milk, so that if a pathogen is there, you'll be able to remove it. Another thing that we use to treat with TB is, of course, antibiotic. All right. So another thing that can be used to treat tuberculosis is antibiotic. Now, the final disease that we want to look at for the evening, and it looks like we're in good time, we want to look at pneumonia. Now, pneumonia, like tuberculosis, is caused by bacteria. Pneumonia, like tuberculosis, is caused by bacteria. It is also spread just like common cold, just like influenza, just like TB. All these are spread by droplets in the air. And of course, if they are on surfaces that you touch and the pathogen is pretty much active there, of course, you could infect yourself with the pathogen. So be careful, make sure that you sanitize, make sure that you are aware of your surrounding, and don't be like a lot of person. I was just looking at, I think, TikTok a while ago on my phone, and I'm seeing in Africa, Jamaica, where the police they are arresting persons who are without mask. I don't know if it's a good idea. Neither do I know if it's a bad idea, right? But what I know is that there are some persons that will be poorer next week because they'll have to pay some money in the court or, of course, do some time. So I suggest to us just to avoid the courthouse, wear your mask. All right? They are not arresting for it because the World Health Organization would have said their piece, and you know that this is their baby. They have to get it under control. So countries have to put in tighter measures to ensure that the numbers go down. They are saying that I think in the first 5 months of COVID, the numbers that we have now would have, I think, double or be the same since the last increase here. I think something like that. I really don't remember the news, but you could look at the statistic. So, of course, it is cause for concern. Now, when we have pneumonia, the throat is affected as it would have with influenza. The lungs also will be affected because all these diseases are diseases that affect the respiratory system. And that is why one might ask about COVID and tuberculosis because they all affect the respiratory system, and some of the signs and symptoms might be somewhat similar. When you have pneumonia, you tend to cough. Of course, you're going to cough because of the buildup of mucus. That is pretty much a common thing. Look at that for Trinidad. Now, the bacteria could also enter the blood if not treated, and that would cause even more complication. Now, there's increased mucus production when you have pneumonia, and that is one of the things that is associated with the coughing. Another thing with pneumonia is that you will also experience some amount of fever and, of course, shivering. Don't mention the pain. Pain is going to be associated with it. And, of course, if the pneumonia is not brought under control within good time, then the individual might experience a lonely phenomena we call death. How do we treat with pneumonia? We can use antibiotics, and the one that jumped out here is penicillin. Now, while I talk about antibiotic, I have 4 minutes left, and you would have recalled on the, oh, this is beautiful. Let me just time this nicely. On the 2021 paper, where they brought COVID with influenza, and they asked why you couldn't have used antibiotic. Let us just treat with this here and now. So we looked at a couple of diseases a while ago. You probably want to type them in the chat for me. Tell me all the diseases we looked at a while ago. All right? All right, let me make it easier because I haven't given you any work since evening. I want you to type the name of the diseases that I said that there were, the causative agent was bacteria. And I want you to type the name of the diseases that I said that the causative agent was virus. All right? So we looked at, I think, 2 bacteria. We looked at 2 viruses, and we also looked at some that are associated with the immune system, disease of the immune system. So we said that asthma. Asthma? Did we say asthma? All right, we said tuberculosis and pneumonia. Common cold and influenza are virus. All right. Tuberculosis. Somebody is not remembering something. Oh, something left us somewhere. All right. So let us get that right. What did we say? We have been looking at a number of diseases. All right. So tuberculosis and pneumonia, they are caused by bacteria, and influenza and common cold, they are caused by viruses, virus. All right, so here we go. In that question, they were asking, why is it? Now look, all these diseases that we've just looked at, they are affecting the respiratory system. But we have 2 that is associated with bacteria and the other 2 virus. Why is it that you couldn't use the penicillin to treat common cold and influenza? And I said on that paper that antibiotic is used to treat bacteria and not virus. If we use the antibiotic to treat virus, won't work, but it will also cause another problem. The problem that it will cause is that which we refer to as antibiotic resistance. So the next time you try to treat bacteria with this type of medication, it might not work. That takes us to the end of the lesson for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. For those persons who were not here at the start of the show, I did do a lesson to assist you with finding the notes. You can, of course, move on to the video online, and just below the video to the right, you'll see three little buttons. We refer to them, or three little dots. We refer to them as ellipses. You are going to click on the ellipsis, and having clicked on the ellipsis, you are going to see something that says open transcript. Once you would have opened the transcript, you will see the timeline for all that we have done today, and you can click on that area of the timeline, and it will take you to that area of the video. Other than doing that, there is a box somewhere almost middle, closer to the right, below your video, that has something looking like some writing, some little lines on it. You can click on that, and it will give you the closed caption for the video. Now, you should also pay attention to the description that falls below the video. Sometimes you have to click more because there are usually added stuff there to assist you. While you're watching the video, to the top right-hand corner of the video, you'll see a white circle with an inverted exclamation mark. That will tell you what is the suggested video, or the video that you can watch next, or you're expected to watch next. To the bottom right, you'll see a yellow icon saying CSEC Biology TCP. You can click on that icon to subscribe. And when you subscribe, remember to hit that notification bell and select all, so that you will be advised even when I'm not having a class. Other than doing that, if you look below the video, you will see a red button that says subscribe. You could use that to subscribe as well. Now, most persons would be able to find a video on YouTube, but will you be able to find all my videos? Probably not. In order to find all my videos, there's a blue icon to the left of the screen, just below the video, a blue icon that says CSEC Biology TCP. Click on that icon and it will carry you to the back end of my channel. As soon as you would have gotten to the back end of the channel, you can click on videos, and you can choose from among 200 plus videos, the video that you want to watch. Some of the videos are also grouped in suggested playlists, so you could choose to do a playlist as well. I am really grateful that you are here this evening, and as usual, I'm very happy to share with you. I want you to continue enjoying the rest of your evening. We are just 3 minutes in overtime, but I guess that is fine. So thanks much for coming, and please look out for the other thumbnail that will tell you when we are going to be having the other live. I really don't want to tell you now when the other live will be, but we're going to try to ensure that we have another one this week. Again, remind your friends to come on over. This is where we're going to be doing the marathon for CSEC. Good evening, good night. Those persons who have not yet subscribed, it is time for you to go on over and do it now. Remember that the video is online, so you can always go and watch the replay. Good evening.